Years ago, when my job was not taking up every single minute of my waking day, I used to be an avid explorer. I never liked cities with the fusion of gray and green, the strange smells of civilization, and the constant background noise of machines, animals, and humans locked into a far too small area. Cities are weird. They always seem to me as if they are not made for humans, they are made against humans. Cities exist only because humans like to stay together, because solitude scares us. Being alone with our own minds scares us. But in reality, cities don't bring us together, they drive us apart. I believe the loneliest man in the world is not that one man, the last of his tribe, which lives in the Amazon rainforest. No. The loneliest man in the world lives in an apartment in one or the other megacity. The loneliest man in the world probably constantly hears the lives of others above and below him and sees those other people's lives on TV or out of his unwashed window, but none of those take part in his life. But I digress. Whenever I talk about cities, I cannot stop myself from thinking about their effects on our lives and how they slowly rob us of our humanity. That is why the most horrible crimes in human history always took place in cities with neighbors that would have noticed them if they hadn't been too absorbed in their own worlds. That is why, back when I had time for it, I would, as often as I got the chance, take my car, or maybe even a train, drive out to the most forgotten place I could think of, and just walked until my feet ached. At every junction, I would ask myself, where am I less likely to meet people? I did this for several years in every one of the countries I lived in. And after a few months, I would always find my place. A location that either nobody else seemed to know about or that only people like me would visit. People sick of the noises and smells of civilization. And thinking back to all those places I called mine in southern France, a good hour by car from Avignon, I found the place that I loved the most. I know I certainly wasn't the only one to visit there. Occasionally, in the cooler months, I would even find fresh skid marks on the mossy ground near the house. But I still remember with deep passion the moment that I would park my car, step outside and hear birds instead of sirens, moving leaves instead of cars, and silence instead of chatting humans. It was quite a hike to get to the house. I could have taken the car there, but as a Buddhist would say, I didn't want to reach somewhere I wanted not to reach. I wanted to be on a journey. If you have never done a hike alone in a fresh forest, try it. There is no better way to invigorate yourself, to forget the worries or sins of the past, and to discover who you are. I don't need a 2-week holiday at the beach to relax. If I want to relax, I just need a 2-day holiday in a green forest. Usually I reached the house by midday, staying for an hour or so, and then hiked back. I loved the moment of approaching the small clearance. Look at the old walls of the roofless but else intact house. I would climb on the small heap of stones that once must have been a barn, and then I would take a nap with my head rested on the rim next to the old well. I think if there is anything that really kept me coming back, it was the old well. It was, after so many years of abandonment, still intact and was so deep that I couldn't see its bottom. The ring of stones that marked its border was overgrown with moss and grasses, and a tree was leaning against it on one side as if it wanted to look inside. But there was something else about the well that made me feel happy whenever I saw it from the distance, and serene whenever I was finally able to sit down next to it. The smell and the noise. I was never sure whether it were many flowers growing around the well, or whether it was the well itself that smelled so sweet and delicious. I often thought about bringing a bucket and filling my water bottle to take its sweetness home. But in the end, I never got around to it. My hikes were exactly about not planning, and so I never planned for the bucket and rope. The other great thing about the well was the noises. They weren't always there, just 2 or 3 times through all the times I had visited the well. But those times I could hear the water moving, probably from a small frog or some fish living inside it. Water hitting against stones or against itself. The most soothing sound I can think of. I'm still very sad that all this was destroyed. They bulldozed the whole place shortly after, well, my discovery. It was in autumn, although I'm not sure what day it was. The days were getting colder and the first leaves were starting to become yellow and orange. I arrived at the house around 11 a.m., earlier than usual. I guess that was lucky for her. I did what I always did. I dropped my bag, climbed on the former barn, and breathed deeply. There were some fresh skid marks, but that didn't bother me. It was clear that no one was around, and I wouldn't have been bothered by meeting like-minded people either. After a few minutes, I started to unpack my lunch and was going to sit near the well. That's when I saw the blood. And that's when I heard the noises. Familiar noises, the noises that I had enjoyed so much before. But only in the evening, after it was all over, did I realize that those noises meant something different than I had always imagined. I called inside the well, something I had done once or twice when I had first visited the house, to greet the gods, as I would call it. Only this time I got an answer. The voice was weak, as if it were from far below. Help, please help. It took 2 hours for the police and firefighters to arrive, and it took another hour for them to pull Eileen out of the well. I still remember her words when she finally got out. Thank you, oh thank you so much. Her skin was pale and blue with cuts all over her upper body, and she was crying. Later, when she was warming up in the ambulance, I overheard her story. I think this story, hearing her words, was what made me go into my current career. I was on a date with this guy I met, and he wanted to show me a romantic spot. And we came here, and then he suddenly got strange. He attacked me, and he was so much stronger than me. He did horrible things with her, and afterwards, he threw her in the well. There are bodies down there. Oh God, so many bodies. They pulled 12 corpses and skeletons out of the well, and a few more body pieces. From what I later read in the papers, most of the victims were alive when he threw them in. The bodies were decomposing while half in the water, read one of the newspapers. And all I could think of was the sweet smell I loved. The victims must have struggled for a long time, read another. And all I could think of were the sounds that lulled me to sleep.